No, am I at the wrong thing? You're not at the wrong thing. I promise. Because to know why monarch butterflies are important, we actually have to understand the world and the area that they live in. So to understand that, we have to talk about this type of habitat called a prairie. Has anyone raised their hand if you've heard of a prairie before? Anyone? Okay. What do you think a prairie is? Anyone? What's a prairie? A place with long grass. Yes, that's right. Anyone else? Any ideas? You in the back. Yes. Yes. In the dinosaur. That is very true. A lot of planets are pretty green. You guys are good at this. So with that, I have some pictures, and you guys you can just shout this out. Just let me know. Do you think this is a prairie? What do you think? Yes, no, yes, okay. How about this? All this, prairie, yes or no? What do you think? Yes. Okay. How about this? Yes, I got yes, and also we got a little contention on this one. The thing is, none of those are prairies. None of those. I know you're like, what? This last one's actually a wheat field, which is not a prairie. This is a prairie. Can you see the difference? That's a prairie. See, you see there's a lot more flowers and a lot of different types of plants growing in here. It's not just one kind like we saw in the fields. So you might wonder, I might have just like blown your mind right now, and you're like, what is a prairie? So this is just some information about this kind of habitat. So a prairie is just a fancy term scientists call these flat areas full of grass in North America. And there's also what they call the steppe in Europe and Asia, and they have this they're called belts in southern Africa. And what they all have in common is that the prairies are hot and dry in the summer, and they're very cold and snowy in the winter. And the reason you might wonder, well, why are there grasses and not like a forest or something? So prairies actually get less rain than forests, so the trees can't grow, but there's more rain than deserts, because if there's less rain, then there would just be nothing growing. And that's why all these grasses, they're called drought resistant. So that means that they can survive long periods without rain. And this is some fancy words here. It contains these kind of things called graminoids, which is another scientific word. It just basically means grasses, and forbs just means flowers. So around 75% of a real prairie is just grass, and the other 25% is just flowers. This is a graph, like, they look like, I think like the terms, they kind of like aliens. I'm like, where are the graminoids? Where are the forbs? Kind of funny graph I made. But anyway, there's really three types of prairies. And the farthest one from us are called the shortgrass prairie, and all the names are pretty self-explanatory. Because what's one of the kids, let me know, what is right over here? What's right here? What kind of habitat? Which is if it's hot and dry, then we call it a desert, yes. So if it's a desert, so when you go a little bit north, on North America, as you go west, there's less rain. So over here, this is the least rain. But as you go further east, you get a little more rain. So then you can have little short grasses grow. That's why it's called the shortgrass prairie. Then you go a little further, and you get the mixed grass prairie over here. So it's mixed because it can have short and tall grasses. And over here, where we live in Illinois, we have the tall grass prairie, because that's where we have the most rain of all the grasslands. So we can have grasses that are up to 10 feet high. So that's a little bit about the prairie. So now that we know that, we can talk a little bit about pollinators, which are found all throughout the prairies. The question then is, well, what is pollination? So pollination is just who thinks they know what pollination is right now? What's pollination?
It's like
That's really good. That's pretty close, actually. You're good. So basically, kind of exactly, pretty close to what he said, is that flowers, as you guys know, all living things, flowers, humans, bees, whatever, they all have to have baby flowers so that they can have more of them in the future. And the flowers, unlike animals, they can come and have babies with other animals or other flowers. So they have to do something to allow them to make the seeds. And seeds are just baby plants, in a way. So that thing that allows that to happen is pollination. So pollination is just when you have the cells that we call it the reproductive cells, which make the baby seeds. It has to go from one flower to another. So there somehow the pollen, they call it pollen, these little seeds, these little cells, and they take it from one flower to another, and then it goes from the male flower to the female flower. And as you guys know, there's actually boy flowers and girl flowers, if you didn't know that, which is pretty cool. And so the cells from the boy flower go into the girl flower, and then they make the baby flower, which is the seeds. But there has to be something to do that, and that's where pollinators come in. So a pollinator is just an animal that transfers this pollen from one flower to another to make the seeds. And there's a whole lot of different animals that pollinate, and I just think you're like hummingbirds. Some in the jungle, you have monkeys and even rats will pollinate certain flowers. And pollination is extremely important to basically all life on Earth. Around 3/4 of all of the plants growing all around the world require pollination. And around 35%, around 1/3 of all of the food that we humans eat comes from pollinators. People always ask me, Peter, do they intentionally pollinate? Like, do they pollinate because they want flowers to make more baby flowers? The answer is no. Because if you think about, I always tell people, butterflies and pollinators, they're greedy. All they want is their food. So the flowers, you might think flowers aren't really smart, but they're really smart. The reason they're smart is they know that they have to get their pollen from one flower to another. But the pollinator is not just going to come for nothing. So the flower learned that if they make this sugar, this like sugar water inside the flower, which we call nectar, the butterfly is going to come and drink the nectar. And as he drinks, he's going to get the pollen stuck on his legs. So then he goes to the next flower, and then the pollen goes like that, and then they make the baby seed. So the flower is kind of tricking the butterfly into having it make more babies. Now, what kind of pollinators are there? So, as you said, there's a lot of different kinds of pollinators, but 99% of them are actually insects. So these include insects you might think of like bees, butterflies, wasps, but also things like flies and beetles. Some things that you wouldn't think that would pollinate, they actually do pollinate certain kinds. And in addition to the insects, we have other things like hummingbirds and certain species of bats, especially in the deserts where they have a big cactus, they have the flowers in the night, the bats come to pollinate. So there's all different types of pollinators all throughout the world. And there's actually one kind of hummingbird that's, hey, who's seen a hummingbird this summer? Who's seen a hummingbird? A couple people? So if you saw a hummingbird in Illinois, then I can guarantee you it was the ruby-throated hummingbird. Because they're very similar to the monarch butterfly, because they migrate from Mexico every year just to come to Illinois, which I think is pretty cool. Now, what kind of foods are pollinated? So this is a really short list actually of just a couple of the common foods that we eat every day that come from pollinators. Who likes almonds here? Almonds. Who likes almonds? You need pollinators. You need bees for almonds. Who likes vanilla? Vanilla anything. Yes. You need pollinators for that. And finally, I think everyone's gonna raise their hand here. Who likes chocolate? Yeah. Chocolate, yes. You need pollen. All of those things I said and many, many more require pollination. So it's really important that we save the pollinators and preserve their habitat and the ways that they can survive. And one of those pollinators that I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the presentation is my favorite pollinator, which is the monarch butterfly.
We're not done yet.
We got a little bit more. So, a couple facts about the monarch butterfly. The scientific name, it's a really fancy word. You probably will never need, if you go on Jeopardy, you might they might ask you, hey, what's the name of the monarch butterfly? And you can answer is Danae's plexus. Very cool. Another important thing about the monarch butterflies, though, is that the lady butterflies only lay their eggs on one kind of plant called milkweed. And we'll talk about milkweed a little bit later. So that's the egg on the top left thing. It's magnified many times. In reality, it's so small that you can't even see it. You need like glasses or a magnifying glass to see it. And once that egg hatches, that's what it looks like when it's first born. It looks like a little alien, and I think it's adorable. And for 2 weeks after that, this is the cat called caterpillar, it's just a baby butterfly. The caterpillar is only going to do 2 things for 2 weeks. He eats and he poops. That's all he does. Lots and lots of poop. Trust me, I've raised lots of caterpillars, they make a lot of poop. And they eat so much that they grow 1,000 times their initial size. So you think, like, if you were born, say you're like a 7-8 pound baby, imagine you're 8,000 pounds in 2 weeks. You'd be like an elephant, which would be crazy. And after 2 weeks, the butterfly, or the caterpillar, is ready to become a butterfly. So he makes this type of cocoon called a chrysalis, and it protects the butterfly during its transformation. And after around 2 weeks, the monarch butterfly is done, and it comes out as a full adult butterfly. And once it's an adult butterfly, it actually doesn't have teeth anymore. All it does is it has this long tongue, and it's called a proboscis, and that's what it uses to suck the nectar or the sugar water out of flowers. But even though the monarch butterfly doesn't have a mouth or is not eating the milkweed leaves, the milkweed has this kind of poison in it, and that stays inside the monarch butterfly for the rest of its life. And people always ask me, Peter, why are monarch butterflies orange? The reason for that is it's a warning sign. Because you think about it, what color are construction signs? Someone tried out orange. And if you see a construction sign, are you going to say, are you going to like go speed ahead at full speed? Or are you going to be like, oh, slow down, caution? It's like caution, right? It's the same thing in the animal world. If something is as brightly colored as a monarch butterfly, you know that they want you to see them because they taste terrible. So this shows a little graph of as the monarch butterfly gets bigger, as it keeps eating more and more and more. And they call it instarts, just different stages of its growth. So this is how it looks like right before it becomes a butterfly. So here, it's very interesting the way it happens, because it kind of hangs upside down on a branch, and then its skin splits open because the chrysalis is underneath, and then its face falls off. See, like as its face on the top there, this falls off. And then after 2 weeks, it comes out and it has a new face, and it's a butterfly, which is really, really cool. So that's the first interesting thing about the butterflies. The second is that the monarchs migrate. So during the summer, you're going to see monarch butterflies everywhere in meadows, prairies, grasslands, gardens, cities, suburbs, everywhere throughout the eastern United States and southern Canada. Who's seen a monarch butterfly this year? Who saw it this year during the summer? You see a couple people? Yeah. Good, that's really good. We see a lot of people here looking to see them. So there's also a group of butterflies that live in the west, in California, but for here we're going to focus on the eastern monarchs. So, of course, right now it's getting pretty cold, and we're going into like December, January. Do you guys see monarch butterflies this time of year? No? So the reason for that is that butterflies, they can't survive the cold. So they would die if they were all here, so they have to go somewhere. They either go somewhere or they go underground. Some butterflies actually, they burrow underground or they make their little cocoons, but the monarchs don't do that. They actually, the entire population travels down to one little forest on one mountain in one part of Mexico called Michoacan. And that's where they just basically hang out from November to February. and they travel 3,000 miles each way to get there. And it's the longest journey of any butterfly or any insect in the world. And they travel 74 miles every day to get there. Think a little butterfly traveling 75 miles. It's pretty incredible. So this year shows all, this is kind of, oh no, what happened? Oh, the screen doesn't like the butterflies apparently. So that did show a picture of the monarch butterflies. Okay, let's see if this works. So once the monarch butterflies get to Mexico, they're going to overwinter or just hang out on these big fir trees, or kind of like a big evergreen tree. It's called an oyamo tree in Spanish. And tens of thousands of butterflies blanket these trees. You see these trees that kind of look orange? That's not their natural color. They're orange because they're just covered with butterflies. And each year, it takes around 4 to 5 generations to be born to complete the entire monarch butterfly cycle. So the first, generation 0 we'll call them, they're the ones that start in Mexico, and then they migrate up to Texas or so, and then they have their babies and die. And then the next generation, from generation 1 to generation 3 or 4, they're slowly moving up north. They're adults for about 2 to 4 weeks. They lay their eggs and they die. The last generation of the year, generation 5, which the scientists call them the super generation, because they're the ones that migrate all the way back down to Mexico. And instead of living like a month, like the other butterflies, they live 8 months. So they can migrate all the way back down and start the cycle over again, which is, you think that age difference is pretty awesome. And so that's the second interesting thing about the butterflies. The final thing is that they're actually heading towards extinction. So the two facts, there's some facts here. The two I like to focus on, that in 20 years, the monarch population nationwide has declined approximately 90%, and the eastern monarch population, which is the one that we're concerned about, they've declined 80%. In 20 more years, if this continues, if this decrease continues the way it is, scientists believe that they could go extinct entirely, which is very bad, and something we don't want to happen. But in order to save them, we have to know why they're dying. So there's a couple reasons why they're dying. The first one is that there's been an increase in natural disasters that are being worsened by climate change and other factors that are threatening the overwintering site. Because you think about it, if you have all the monarch butterflies in the world in one little mountain, side of the mountain in Mexico, if even like one storm or something just comes through that area, it could kill a significant portion of the population. And in 2002, that's exactly what happened. When there was one single storm in Mexico that went through that area where the butterflies were, that killed approximately 75% of the population in that one storm. And that's all the dead butterflies. It's all, oh no. See, he doesn't like the picture because it's scared. See, look at it before it goes away. Dead butterflies. It's so sad. I cried when I saw this picture. It's so sad. The crazy thing is, though, that's not the main reason the butterflies are dying. Because you think about it, butterflies are insects, and insects, they lay a lot of eggs. A monarch butterfly can lay up to 1,000 eggs during her lifetime. So that's not the main reason that they're going extinct, because if there's a storm, their population could come back if it's decreased to very low. The reason that they're going extinct has to do with a plant called milkweed, which so we're going to talk about it later, and that's now. So milkweed is actually a wildflower that's found all throughout North America and South America, and it's not a weed. That's a huge misconception people get, because I don't know why Carl Linnaeus named it milkweed, but because of that name, people always think it's a weed. But it's not a weed, it's a native plant that's been here for long before any of us or our ancestors were here, even for the time of the Native Americans. So another thing that people often get wrong about milkweed, they think there's one kind of milkweed. There's actually over 100 different species all throughout North and South America. They live in different habitats, and they often look very different because they live in those different environments. A couple things they have in common is that most of the species are toxic or poisonous when you eat them in large quantities. Because this latex, when you, if you ever, who has a milkweed plant in their yard? How about that? Who has milkweed? Anyone? Well, you have milkweed in your yard by the end of this, so don't worry. So milkweed is, if you prick it, if you prick the leaf, then it'll have this white sap that comes out. That's why I call it milkweed, because it kind of looks like milk. And it has this chemical that if you eat enough of it, you get a heart attack and die. The good thing is though, you would have to eat so much milkweed that by that point, like, you would like start throwing it up because it tastes so bad. And that's the plant. It evolved over time to have that disgusting taste. So like a deer or something would eat it and say, oh, this is gross, I'm not going to eat it, so it protects the plant. So people always ask me, Peter, I have a dog or a cat or a younger sibling that likes to eat plants outside my house, and if they eat that, will they die? And what I always tell them is that as long as like, there's really no way that they could eat enough milkweed to kill them, because even dogs and cats know that it tastes bad and they're not going to go nearby it. The only exception is if you have a cow in your backyard. Cows like to eat milkweed for some reason, so keep it away from your cow. But other than that, you're fine. And milkweed is home to many other different types of bugs in addition to monarch butterflies. And they have these fancy flowers in the summer, and they have these seed pods, which I'll show you a pic. I'll show you some at the end of this presentation. They put that in the fall, and that's where they have the seeds. And there's 4 types of milkweed that are native to the Chicagoland area. The one on the left is common milkweed, and below these are the seed pods that have the seeds inside. And this is swamp milkweed, this is world milkweed, and this is butterfly weed. So now that we know a little bit about milkweed, we can understand that the biggest reason why the monarchs are dying is that there's an increase in pesticides in farms in the Midwest, like where we are today. And the story goes like this. So for centuries, we've had milkweed growing with the farmers in the Midwest. Because remember we talked about the prairies before? So all of Illinois actually used to be a big prairie. And then in the 1800s, the European settlers came and they basically killed it all. I think we have like 0.01% of all the prairie that used to exist in Illinois. So they killed off like 99.99%, which is so sad. But the milkweed somehow survived after that. And they were living, it's a really tough plant. It can grow in very different conditions and survive in a lot of different places. So farmers, they hated it because it would grow in between the rows of crops because it was adapted to this kind of soil and temperature. So farmers, they couldn't really do much about it until the 1990s when there was this new kind of chemical that came about, or the introduction of GMOs. Anyone know what a GMO is? Anyone? GMO, it stands for genetically modified organism, and it's basically, farmers realized that there was this new kind of chemical called Roundup. Who's heard of Roundup before? Roundup, like the garden thing you spray on the plants to kill it. So they're putting this Roundup on their fields. And then they realized, wait, when we put this on the fields, our corn is dying as well. What are we gonna do? And then some farmers said, like, stop using Roundup. And I'm like, no, what we'll do is we'll genetically modify the corn so that it's resistant to the Roundup, so we can plant as much corn as possible and spray as much Roundup as possible, and we'll kill everything except the corn. And that's what they did. And that's why we have genetically modified corn, and of course the milkweed was not modified, so once they sprayed all the Roundup on the fields, it killed all the milkweed, and of course it led to the butterflies' gradual extinction. So this graph here shows the increase in genetically engineered crops in the United States. So from 1996 to 2014, but it's like 100% now. Pretty much 100% of all of our cotton, corn, and soybeans are genetically engineered. So as this is increased, and as the amount of Roundup and stuff applied on the fields increases, the monarch butterfly population has declined as well. So as you can see, it kind of goes up and down depending on like weather, any particular year it'll go, but you can see like the general trend is that it's declining. And this year, actually, in February of 2019, we had a very good year for monarch butterflies, but scientists think that that is actually the cause because there was really good weather in Texas last year, and when there's good weather in Texas, then more butterflies survive the journey north. So weather impacts us a little bit, but really the downward trend is still there. So why should you all care about this? I've spent the past 20, 30 minutes talking to you about an orange bug. Who cares about the orange bug? Why should we let the orange bug live? A couple of reasons. One, monarch butterflies are vital pollinators of hundreds of different crop and plant species in the Midwest. As you said before, more than 3/4 of all of the plants in the world, and more than 1/3 of all the food that we eat comes from just pollinators. And there's also an enormous scientific potential in the understanding the body structure and the transformation of the monarch butterfly, and also how it migrates. Because for all the information that I told you here, scientists, they still really don't know that much about the monarch butterfly. So unless you have monarch butterflies that you can test and look at and observe that are alive, then you're not going to be able to figure those things out. And finally, monarchs are Illinois' state insect, and they're also a national symbol of conservation, not just in Illinois, but in the whole United States and Mexico and Canada. So now we're going to talk a little bit about my organization, Homes for Monarchs, and then we're going to go on to the part you've all been waiting for, which is the activity. Yay! Thank you. Like enthusiasm. So we're going to talk. My organization's name is Homes for Monarchs. That's the logo there. Founded and directed by me, Peter Gourdan. You can also call me the Monarch Master if you would like. I go by both names. So the mission statement of the Homes for Monarchs that we originally founded the organization to save the monarch butterfly, which has declined 90% since 1996. And Homes for Monarchs combats this decline by distributing, or we do two things mainly. One is we call it action and awareness. So the first is action. So we distribute free native plant seed packets, like milkweed seeds, throughout the Chicagoland area for people to plant in their gardens and hopefully grow more habitat or more homes for monarchs. So we call it Homes for Monarchs. And the second part, which is just as important, is we do awareness. So we organize and collaborate with free community events and presentations to help spread environmental awareness. So you guys are really lucky today because you got both parts of the mission. You got the awareness right now, and you're also going to help us save the butterflies with the action in like a couple of minutes. So this is just a thing. It shows the impact here. Since 2016, Homes for Monarchs has created and distributed 21,000 free native plant seed packets, 20,000 native plant seed, oh Lord. Native plant seed balls, and in total, 1 million individual seeds. And we've organized and tabled or participated in over 100 events, and I just made Connex. So Connex is an event that it's short for Conservation Expo, and it's a big conservation event that my organization planned, held, and executed at my high school in the southwest Chicago suburbs. It attracted more than 1,000 people, and it's kind of like a combination of a craft fair and then like a trade show. We have different small businesses and organizations and agencies, and kids activities and live animals. And this year we're bringing a T-Rex skull from the Field Museum for people to touch, which will be awesome. So I'll have flyers in the back, which I'll give you as you guys are working. So you guys are all, it's a free event, so you all are more than welcome to come. It's a great time. And I've utilized the help of around 2,000 volunteers in total ever since for all my activities. Personally, I have put in more than 1,500 hours of my own community service time. I think that I might have the record of community service in my school. We'll have to see. I have to check that, but I'm pretty close up there. And in total, we've impacted in some way or another at least 50,000 people since the start of Monarchs. And if you guys are curious, This is a picture of me where we're actually planting milkweed seeds at